Be happy. Be happy.
Be happy, Mom. Be happy, Mommy.
Come on, keep your chill. Enjoy this time.
Smile.
Smile, smile, my darling.
Honey, you have count your blessings.
Welcome to Creative Mamas Unplugged. We are your hosts. I'm Cherice Barton.
And I'm Shelly Hutchinson. Creative Mamas Unplugged is a podcast where we navigate the hell out of being a creative mom with humor and heart.
We will have honest conversations,
Hear wise words from fellow badass mamas.
and share hilarious stories around motherhood for some much-needed comic relief. Listen, motherhood is the most creative, most difficult job in the world. You are not alone, and you deserve to be happy.
How are you? How was the desert?
The desert? Oh, it was amazing. It was amazing.
So good for your soul.
So good. It was so good. You know, I forgot how much I love working with circus artists. Two of my friends who I worked with in Vegas were the creative producer and the creative director. And I was there as artistic coordinator and choreographer. So it was the three of us working together on the creative team, which was so fun. And we stayed at this sort of glamping situation, this hot springs resort.
I mean, you're in your element when you're there creating. I mean, do you feel like you're at all momming when you're there?
No, I took so much time prepping everything before I left so that I could essentially disappear and have everything taken care of. The babysitter, she had her long list of instructions. All the parents that were helping out had their list of instructions. They had my contact. I had a couple texts come in, but other than that, it was pretty smooth sailing. That's a really nice sweater, by the way.
I want to tell you a secret. It's inside out. That's how I roll. I accidentally put my clothes on inside out because I'm not thinking and I can't process. And then I just enjoy it. I mean, it serves as a reversible sweater. It does not at all. It's not at all.
I actually think it looks good from the front. You just have to cut the tag out.
Yeah, if you just cut the tag out and ignore the seams.
Let's talk about how we came up with this idea for the podcast.
Yes. So we came up with this idea for the podcast when we were talking about feeling like we needed community again and support when we were moving our way through COVID.
Yes, it was during the pandemic.
Right. And during the pandemic, which was a separate entity from that was like a double time parenting. That was like a separate type of parenting era. I feel like there was so much weight to carry in so many areas. And we just felt like we were really, really carrying a lot of mental load and felt isolated, not by nature of what was going on, but just by nature of missing connecting with moms. And it brought us to this idea of using this as a format and a place to connect with others who identify as mothers. And you had started writing about all of this, which you're always so good at. You started, putting it all down. And I think we just really wanted to move to an audio version of what community support for moms would look like, or those, for those of us who identify as moms.
Yes, yes. I mean, the loneliness is real. And yes, during the pandemic, of course it was. But just in general, it's really about community because there is such a lonely feeling in being a mom and all that comes with it, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like a lot of the loneliness can come from how much we carry. When we talk about this mental load, we're always talking about, we're carrying the emotions of our kids or what's going on in the house or what's going on with our immediate family. And I actually came across this really funny TikTok, and it was this mom taking a moment, sitting down with a book, and she sits down, she opens her book. Her husband is sitting down across from her. All of a sudden she just starts ticker taping in her mind, like, oh, I got to call this person and I forgot to put the laundry in. And, I got to make this doctor's appointment. And she starts just going over, this like laundry list of things in her mind as she's sitting with her book, clearly trying to relax. And she looks over at her husband and she's like, I wonder what he's thinking. And then an audio version of like a Creed song just starts like coming on, like track 3 of Creed. It's just that's the difference. It's just so funny because we cannot sit down and just check out. But I just feel like that's such a great example of what can often go on in the household. She's like, I just want to sit down and read my book. Oh my God, I have to call this person. And then she looks over and with arms wide open.
Oh my God. We do carry so much, but we also carry ourselves. So that's another aspect of motherhood that we want to cover is self-care. What is it? What is it to be a woman? How do we care for ourselves? It's another thing that we want to cover. And when you think about womanhood and hormones,
Hormones. Hormones. Who's going through menopause? Raise it.
yes,
Yeah.
pause. I mean, menopause, perimenopause.
It's what's worse, the perimenopause or the menopause. Like, I'm interested in having that dialogue with experts, because for some people to find out, like, I'm in perimenopause, which I just always assumed was menopause, but I believe they're separate, right? And this peri that I'm going through is a disaster.
Yeah, I want to bring in experts as well, so we will absolutely make that happen. Okay, you're going to hear me quoting a lot of amazing women on this podcast, many of whom I've heard interviewed on your friend Erin Keating's podcast, Hotter Than Ever. She's brought on a lot of great female guests, and anyway, it was on her podcast that I heard that it wasn't until 1993 that women were required to be a part of medical studies.
Unbelievable.
1993. So until then, the medical community was like, oh, women are just smaller versions of men. So who needs them in the studies? I mean, it's so crazy. So I think I guess we are only starting to understand the enormity of these hormonal shifts that we go through in midlife. And I mean, it's very real. I've been experiencing it too, and it is no joke, Shelly.
No joke. But speaking of jokes, I mean, there is humor behind like all of this. There's humor behind it all. And I think one of the spaces that we want to hold in this podcast is hearing from other moms, hearing other moms' perspectives, the funny stories, making this a place of humor and a connection, sharing the funniest stories that you have of toddlerhood, of parenting, being a mom hormonally or whatever.
100%. I mean, you and I certainly have a lot of stories to share and funny ones. And speaking of funny stories, want to hear a funny story?
Always.
Okay. So, little backstory. I have to admit, it's really hard for me to constantly be around these two beautiful little girls with their perfect skin and their no wrinkles. And if I go too long without being around friends, more specifically women my age, it really starts to get to me. And I notice that it starts to affect my self-esteem. I know it sounds ridiculous, but it's true. I'll be in the bathroom with the girls, for example, and I'll look at their faces, and then I'll look up at mine, and I only have them to compare myself to. So I feel old. I mean, I feel old all the time, Shelly. And Willow, Willow said to me the other day, she said, Mama, I'm really not trying to hurt your feelings. I'm not. But when you smile, you look like an old lady. Oh
Did you say thank you?
my
Oh.
God. I don't know. I guess because when I smile, my eyes like wrinkle, like laugh lines. Oh my God. And so then, okay, here's another one. Another one. This is another time. She said something, I don't know, she said something about my boobs. And I said, yeah, yeah. I said, hey, Willow, maybe when you grow up, you'll have big boobies just like mommy. And she said, you mean floppy ones?
Oh, hell. Oh, don't talk about the boobs.
And she wasn't saying it as an insult. That's the thing.
Yeah, they just call it out as it is. I mean, that's the best thing about kids. One of the things I love so much is the way they just, they just call it out. I mean, you're used to looking at their beautiful skin in the mirror, and they're used to looking at their own beautiful skin in the mirror, and then you come up and see old man River looking right back at them like, I don't blame you. I'm really convinced though that kids don't know how old their parents are. Like, I'm positive my kids will one day will say 61, next day will say 30. Most of the time they'll go 60s and over. But I was talking to the boys a couple of weeks ago, and I was telling them a story about, saying something about, we might have been talking about music or something, saying back in the 60s. And my oldest is like, wait, 18 or 19? I'm like, 19, bro. not 1860s. Like,
My God,
come on, dude.
back in the 1800s when I was a child.
Yes. And or like there was a time when my youngest and I were, we would always collect rocks and things and sticks and stuff in the dirt and go on, and explore. And, we found a feather and he straight up asked me if I used to write with one. No concept of age. Like, I'm pretty sure though, I knew, like, I really don't even know how old my parents are, but I'm pretty sure I knew, like, when I was a kid, that my parents weren't around in the 1700s. Pretty sure I knew that.
Yeah. My kids often make jokes about, back in the olden days when there was no internet.
Oh my.
Yeah. Which actually, Shelley, brings me to we've discussed bringing in an expert to talk about internet and safety for the kids. I mean, it's insane.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's really interesting though, like when we talk about, well, once you put a picture on the internet, it's out there. Like, I don't even really know how to explain out there, I mean, I don't even really understand what it means myself, much less having to explain that to kids. I think it's extremely complicated. And, I mean, I don't know how electricity works. I'm supposed to explain what out there in the cloud means, I mean, I feel like it makes it really tricky to have a sit down conversation with our kids about it because it's something that's actually really advanced for us. So we
Mhm.
can't even wrap our head around it. And it requires deep conversation. I mean, simplistic, but deep because it is something that we want to make sure our kids understand.
Summer said that at her school the other day, they had someone come in to talk to them about internet safety. And Summer was telling me in the car, she was saying all of these things that even I didn't even know. She was talking about TikTok and about how the app records you and, it catches things that you say. And I mean, half of it I didn't even know. It's a lot. Yeah, it's super important. So we'll definitely bring someone on.
Well, I love that because I think, when someone comes, we always have police officers come in and talk about drugs in elementary school and the use of drugs and hugs, not drugs, stay away from it, the DARE program and all of that, which is awesome. Having a program that comes in and talks about internet safety I think that's key right now.
It is. I mean,
And
she's about to go into middle school, so she's gonna be getting a phone at some point, and yeah, I was listening to a podcast that had some experts in, and they did talk about teaching the kids at a very young age how to navigate this whole internet thing safely, a lot younger than we would even expect. So I'm curious to hear more. When we were kids, we were just told, don't let any strangers talk to you and all that. We were told not to talk to strangers. We were told not to accept candy from the guy in the white van. I don't know why I said van.
maybe because the green van is a green light. Go ahead, kids. White van, avoid at all costs.
Yeah, go right ahead to the green van. That one's okay.
Part of the curiosity I think that we have too as moms is for people who were once, like us, dedicating their entire life to their career, like us in the creative arts. I mean, we had a full lifetime really before we had kids. And now you have family and you have children and you're a caretaker and you're a guardian. And what does that look like now in terms of how much time in your day do you devote to your creative life and how much time you devote to exercising your creativity and holding space for that? That was one of the bigger challenges that I had in becoming an older parent, which was I spent 40 years doing what I was doing and I had whole 20, 25 years in the business already. And so I was approaching parenting from this perspective of like, I know that I'm going to have to quickly pivot. And what does that feel like? And what does that look like? And how much time am I really going to be able to devote to creation station and making art for myself? And is there space for that in my day? And where do I allow that time to fit in my day? How do I get it done? And I think there are a lot of us that had children later in life around 40 and then realize like, now I have to make this really big shift. And what does that look like now? We're interested in having that conversation and hearing from moms in the creative arts for that reason.
So many of us are living that right now. I mean, personally, I'm navigating that all the time. And I took time off from my work, obviously during the pandemic and then afterwards as well. And I really missed it. I really felt disconnected from myself. It's such a huge part of me. I mean, I'm a creative and I love my work, I love it.
When we were talking about doing this podcast and we were talking about being a mom is the most creative you were ever going to be. I mean, from literally creating a human in your body or mothering a human and having to problem solve so quickly. And you're constantly, I mean, being a mom or a mothering figure, I think, is the most creative role you will ever have in your life.
Mhm.
That's how I feel. And I think that, you love your work like you love your children.
For sure. For sure. I mean, my work, my creativity was my first love. And like you, I had babies later in life, and I really didn't know how I was going to feel. And I really gave myself the benefit of the doubt. I told myself, you might discover that your babies are going to be your everything. I tried to take that on. I think that I felt a lot of pressure from, the voices in my head. Where do these voices come from? They come from society or family or whatever, wherever they come from. I really wanted to appreciate and absorb every minute of being a mother when my children were so little. And I did, and I do, but I have to admit, I started disconnecting from myself, and I've realized how important it is for me to be connected to myself. And a big part of me is my creativity and my work, yes. And so I'm back navigating that and figuring out how I can fit it all in, how I can fit in my work and my children and myself. Post pandemic, I took a year off for my mental health. So it is very, very important for me to find time for self care. And it is extremely challenging. And actually, it's impossible to do it all in any single day. It's like, okay, today I might find time to carve out a little bit of self-care. And tomorrow I'm going to go all in. I'm going to take the kids to the park, or I'm going to take them to Disneyland, or whatever it is. And then, maybe the next day I'm going to dive in and really focus on a project. Like, I find I can't do it all. I can't do it all in one single day. In fact, I think it's impossible. So it's finding the time. Yes, it's time management. Yes, but I think it's also really taking the time to listen to yourself and do a lot of whatever it takes to get in touch with yourself, whether it be writing or meditating or whatever is important to you. Personally, I find being curious is a really big one. I am purposely bringing that into my life. I'm curious, I'm self-witnessing. If I start to feel something, I look at myself and I go, oh, that's interesting. Where's that feeling coming from? And then I look into it. It's been through this process that I've been discovering how important it is for me to be an artist and working and nurturing my first love while being a mother.
Yeah, because the best version of yourself is you will be the best mother. You're
Mhm.
you're only as to your kids as you are to yourself, right? So it just makes you, do you want a better mom? Then I have to carve out time for myself. And I think sometimes it takes a while to see that, because I know that I questioned myself and my role in my career for the first 6 years of both of my kids' life. Should I just be a stay-at-home mom? Should I just really dedicate all my time to them? And they never suffered. I think I just lacked self-care at that time. I gave everything to them and to my work, and I gave nothing to myself, really. And that was at my own detriment. But I would have been completely wonderful being a stay-at-home mom. But the last thing my kids need, looking back now, is like me on top of their shit all the time. They don't need like all my intense focus on them all the time. So I'm glad I held space for that all this time to continue working. I also just didn't know that I could live without dance and my art and what I was doing for work.
Yeah. So many of us face that. Oh, mama, we are not alone.
Not alone.
Creative Mamas Unplugged is produced by Breatheasy Productions with music by Jeremy Jurin. If you enjoyed this episode, please don't forget to give my mama 5 stars and keep coming back. Thanks to us kids, there are plenty of stories to tell. And you are not alone. Bye for now.